I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening to the Lewis Central School Board meeting, and we will go ahead and get started. Would you please take roll?
Ms. Atkins. Here. Mr. Hendricks.
Here.
Mr. Houston.
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel. Here. Mr. Stoffer.
Here.
Mr. Weilich.
Here.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the May 3rd, 2021 agenda?
So moved. Second.
We do have a closed session, 7.06. Dr. Knos, do you want that in closed session? It was for your evaluation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if it's okay with everyone, we'll go ahead and move that to the very end of action items. Then that way, we can go ahead and everyone can leave, or who doesn't need to stay can go ahead and do that, and we'll go into closed session. All right, is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Ms. Atkins.
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Weilich.
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel.
Yes. Our next item on the agenda is commendations and good news.
I'm going to start with a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dave Black, who will have some additional things to share. I want to start by mentioning that the month of May is School Board Recognition Month, and all of our board members have a recognition certificate, which is not a highly expensive gift that we've went and purchased for you all, but it is to recognize your efforts. And I just want to personally say to this board, I've worked for many boards over the years, and the cohesiveness of this board, you definitely don't all agree on everything, but how you operate and how you work, and I think you all have the best interest of kids at heart. And a good board is what makes a district a good district, and I think the board is at the center of all that. So I just personally thank you all. I'd like to recommend that we pay you twice as much next year as you make this year, and I think that's doable, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's doable, yes. Just so you're clear, the board members make zero
Right.
money. Sometimes I make that joke, and people think that they're really paid. So anyway, just recognition to the school board members for their time.
Thank you.
And today actually starts, coincidentally, Teacher Appreciation Week, not only in Lewis Central, but actually throughout the country. And I sent a message out to our complete staff today because I think it's an opportunity to recognize not only teachers, although that is, again, that's the Appreciation Week, but just all who work in education, the time they spend. It's by far not an easy job, has not been an easy job for the last year, that's for sure. But I know in my own experience, I feel the connections that I had with educators growing up to end up being an educator and spending 33 years in education has a lot to do with the contacts that I had with educators and people in education. And I've often said, you know, people's lives change when they come in contact with people who care. And almost all of us can think of a story of an adult, you know, in our younger years, that maybe that was a coach, maybe it was just a teacher in a subject that we excelled, but it helped propel us in life. And so our teachers deserve recognition, and just wanted to also comment and thank our teachers for the fine work they do, the dedication they have for students, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Dave?
Got a couple items to bring to your attention. First of all, we have two students who are National History Day qualifiers. Hannah Moore, an 8th grader, and Olivia Arkfeld, a 10th grader, and there's a little bit in your packet about their projects. It's going to be interesting this year. It's a virtual event, from what I understand, so typically there's been a chance for them to go to Washington, D.C. for this event, and this year will be a virtual event, but we're really proud of the work that those two have done. Our STEM classes at the middle school are very exciting classes, and they had a little challenge this year in that they had to move their vertical farm from the previous space that was used. And Josh provided us with a nice picture of the work that's going on there at the middle school in the STEM class. Boys and girls track, as you notice here recently, won the city track meet. And you know, every year we do kindergarten registration. This year we did kind of a hybrid of kindergarten registration. Last year it was all virtual. This year there was a little hybrid where we had some on the premise visit outside the building, as well as some virtual experiences. And things are coming along. We're getting registrations for next year. We're really excited about that part. I'll also point you out, again, check out our Facebook, our social media accounts, our Flipboard, everything Lewis Central is right there.
Thank you, Dave.
Anyone else? Commendation and good news? All right, the next item on our agenda is comments and suggestions from the audience. This is the first time since we have changed our board policy back in November that this is an actual individual board policy. So I am going to read that. It is policy 213, public participation in board meetings. The board recognizes the importance of citizen participation in school district matters. In order to assure citizens are heard and board meetings are conducted efficiently and in an organized manner, the board will set aside a specific time for public comment. Citizens wishing to address the board during public comment must notify the board secretary prior to the board meeting. The board president will recognize these individuals to make their comments at the appropriate time during public comment. Citizens wishing to present petitions to the board may also do so at this time. The board, however, will only receive the petitions and not act upon them or their contents. The board has the discretion to limit the amount of time set aside for public participation. Normally, speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. However, the board president may modify this time limit if deemed appropriate or necessary. Public comment is a time set aside for community input, but the board will not discuss or take any action on any matter during public comment. A public comment shall be limited to regular board meetings and will not be routinely held during special board meetings. The board has a significant interest in maintaining the decorum of its meetings and is expected that members of the public and the board will address each other with civility. The orderly process of the board meeting will not be interfered with or disrupted by public comment. Any individuals recognized by the board president will only the individuals recognized by the board president will be allowed to speak. Comments by others are out of order. If disruptive, the individual causing disruption may be asked to leave the board meeting. Defamatory comments will be subject to legal action. So with that being said, we have 2 times during our agenda that we receive public comments. And so for tonight's meeting, the first time, which is now, we will listen to the speakers. We have 6 that have signed up, and we will go ahead and allot them 5 minutes. And we will listen to the those speakers at this time. The second part of our board meeting, we will only listen to people that have comments about our discussion items that are on the agenda before we go to action items. And then also, if there is anything online, there is a delay in the streaming. So if anyone has questions online that want to type in on comments online, those will be directed to Dr. Knos so he can answer those later. Any other comments, we will at the beginning of the second time during our agenda for comments and suggestions, if anything needs to be, comments need to be said, we'll say them at the beginning, because if there's a delay, then we can't have them right now. So with that, I will go ahead and call up the first speaker. You do not have to state your address because we do have it for our records. And so Tom McLaughlin.
Good evening, President Sheffel, Vice President Wyledge, and members of the board. My name is Tom McLaughlin. I have been teaching at Lewis Central for 24 years. This is my 32nd year in education, and never before have I entered a year with so much trepidation, nervousness, and uncertainty, and I think we were all in the same boat. You and the 200 and 300 people that joined us when we first talked about how we would handle mitigation this year with this unusual and deadly situation that we had on our hands. I don't think any of us believed that the board might take an action as strong as the one the board did. And I'm here to tell you on behalf of students who are not present, students who have gotten sick, colleagues who have gotten sick, and colleagues who have not gotten sick, that we appreciate the wisdom of what you did in August. All of us were shopping for masks, and we showed up and there were shields in our room, and even with shields and even with hand sanitizer all over the building, and even with other mitigation efforts, controlled seating charts, limiting how we participated in classrooms, we were still nervous, and still students in my classroom, many of them, dozens of them, got sick and were either quarantined or actually had COVID and were very, very ill. I honestly believe that your decision that you made in August saved several lives. I was especially nervous about some of our students who have immune compromised situations, and I myself am immune compromised. As you may or may not be aware, I have many health problems. So going back this fall was something that I did after a great deal of thought. But I felt with masks and shields and the protocols that we had in place at the high school that we could actually do this wisely and keep kids in schools, which was our #1 goal, to keep kids in the building and to keep kids learning and to give them live education. And I, for one, think that we learned a lot each week. Each day we learned a lot about how to do this, how to have online classes happening at the same time. But I credit all of this with the mitigation efforts that you as a board actually mandated at the beginning of the school year. And who would have thought that we wouldn't have to close down at all during the course of the entire year? I would have never thought we had made it to May and we would be safe and have no deaths, and have one pretty seriously ill person. But other than that, I think the people who were seriously ill and who have COVID long-term effects are pretty minimal. So I understand by following social media and by watching some political statements at the high school that there are a group of individuals who believe that the mask mandate is something that we shouldn't have at the building. And at the beginning of this Teacher Appreciation Week and Board Appreciation Week, I want to say, first of all, that I appreciate you for the bold step that you took. And I thank you for the bold step that you took. It made a difference for kids. They were in classrooms. They were learning. And I think if we appreciate our students and we appreciate our staff, that probably we shouldn't enter into a discussion that's contrary to what the Centers for Disease Control tells us what we should do.
Okay, Mr. McLaughlin, your 5 minutes are up.
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to represent you, and thank you for the decision you made in August. I appreciate it.
Okay, the next speaker is Daniel, is it Mann?
Hi, my name is Daniel Mann. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to address the board. And I am appreciative for the fact that you have made the decision to do in-person school, whereas some states did not make that decision for their kids. I also want to acknowledge the teachers and appreciate their efforts and the staff, because they obviously have shown a dedication to their profession. I want to start just by giving some data that I pulled off of coronavirus.iowa.gov, just to prove the point that the death totals in our state as of today are 5,959 deaths. Of those deaths, 5,280 had underlying health issues. Only 679 of those deaths were attributed to COVID only, being the only factor. 99% of the deaths in the state of Iowa are age 50 and older. These are facts that are on their website. 0% are ages 0 to 29 years of age. We are treating our kids like they are in a high-risk group, and the data clearly does not show that. So my question is, why are we holding so tightly to something that may or may not be working? Early on, we've been given mixed signals by the Fear Factory in Washington. Dr. Fauci, on March 8th, in a 60-minute interview, says, quote, "There is no reason to be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face." That was on March 8th of 2020. In April 3rd, our government suddenly decided it was time to voluntarily implement a mask mandate. This new administration has told us 100 days to wear a mask, then to double mask. Now you still have to mask even if you've been vaccinated. They continue to give mixed messages, and they continue to move the goalposts. The problem with the mask that I'm concerned with is that we are instituting an infrastructure of fear into our young people, is what it seems to me. We as parents have been locked out of the buildings. In essence, the school has been locked down from the parents all year long. We can't see for ourselves what is going on. We can only rely on what our kids tell us and report to us. Kids are talking about being threatened with minors or majors, being told they could lose their field day privileges over mask. Kids are also suffering from mental health issues, behavior issues, rashes, staph infections on their faces, dehydration. On top of that, they have to carry the burden that they may get someone else sick or kill someone's grandparent. For a young person to have to take that is a pretty heavy load. And while what you're doing may seem like a noble cause, it's actually an indoctrination of fear. They are learning to play it safe in a dangerous world. We hear excuses from the public health that we need to follow public health. Then the public health says, well, we need to follow the state. And then the state says, the governor's office says, well, go back to your school board, because they're ultimately in charge. And I think that's what is the case. You have to decide what's best for our local kids, not from what comes from Washington. I think a lot of us know by now there's a lot of propaganda that comes out, and it's based on money that they get to shovel around and do with what they please. So fear is a very, very motivating factor. What I'm concerned with mainly, too, is my understanding that the kids get to take their masks off for 30 minutes during lunch.
Mr. Mann, your 5 minutes is up.
Can I finish this point? Because it's an important point. They take their masks off for 30 minutes during lunch, and they used to eat in the cafeteria and the gym. Now they're unmasked for 30 minutes. My question is, wouldn't you have had an outbreak by now if you're allowing kids to be unmasked for 30 minutes a day in the school, but yet you've basically blown all of your mitigation during the middle of the day?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jessica Merrill. Jessica Merrill.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Merrill. I am a Lewis Central alumni, along with my two brothers and my sister. We currently have 13 kids in the school district. Tonight, I represent many parents who are concerned about the issue of mandated masks in our school. Many parents have addressed these concerns to the school's administration, sharing the physical and emotional harm we are witnessing our children endure. We have been told that the school does not see the things that we are seeing as parents. We have been told that the benefits of wearing masks are more important. Our kids complain of headaches and dizziness. We see skin infections, persistent coughs, sores inside their mouths and noses. We see kids who are scared to go to school, who are showing clear signs of anxiety and depression. While we are grateful to the superintendent and the entire board for your efforts in returning our schools to in-person instruction, we oppose another year of mandatory masks and ask that you replace it with a common sense approach whereby students and their parents can choose their personal mask usage, including no mask at all. And here is why. First, CDC studies reporting associations between mask use and mask mandates and better COVID-19 metrics cannot show that masks drove or contributed to these improvements. Likewise, Lewis Central cannot prove this. Sending out weekly email updates and responding to concerned parents consistently referencing masks as the reasons for the school's success in mitigating COVID is unethical. The district is trying to maintain optics, and this is a poor excuse for putting children's health in danger. We know that children ages 0 to 17 are a low-risk group. They do not readily transmit or contract COVID, and those who do very typically only experience mild symptoms. The school environment is therefore a low-risk environment. You cannot continue to push the narrative that masks are the reason for the district's success in mitigating COVID. Second, the most recent guidelines from the Iowa Department of Public Health do not recommend mask mandates, but, quote, recommend staff and other adults wear face coverings, and then say students should be encouraged to wear a face covering when able to do so correctly and safely. They also recommend not using face shields unless they are used in combination with a face covering, as they do nothing to limit the spread of aerosols. Yet many students and staff at LC use only face shields. Lewis Central claims to be following local public health recommendations, but has shown many inconsistencies. Third, the FDA website states that labeling on cloth and surgical masks may not imply or state that masks prevent, reduce, or protect against microbes or viruses. Face masks have only been approved by the emergency use authorization due to the research and evidence they reduce or stop viruses is lacking. Next, the WHO specifically says children should not wear masks when playing sports or doing physical activities such as running, jumping, or playing on the playground, so this does not compromise their breathing. Children playing outside do not meet conditions for close contact, which is defined consistently across the board as being within 6 feet of someone for 15 minutes consecutively. There is no reason, especially with the established zones LCS put into place, that children should be masked outside during recess while actively playing. PE classes can be structured to meet close contact requirements and can be held outdoors when weather permits, to allow children in all buildings to be unmasked during these times. 5, Iowa is literally turning away vaccine shipments because the demand is so low. Our at-risk, our healthcare workers, our school staff, and many more are fully vaccinated. At what point are healthy individuals allowed to resume a natural way of living? We all have friends and family who fall in the at-risk group, but we will never be free of this virus or any virus, and some people will always be at risk. We will continue to see cases rise and fall. That will never stop. We cannot continue to put this burden on healthy people and on our children who pose minimal risk. Next, a culture of fear has been perpetuated by our government unnecessarily. We were made aware by the WHO that the widely used PCR test had a high risk of producing false positive COVID-19 results, and ironically, on January 20th, 2021, they changed the way these tests were to be conducted and reported going forward. By February 8th, we were witnessing an unprecedented decline in positive cases worldwide, but that previous data was maintained. We know that 94% of COVID deaths have an average of 2.6 other underlying health conditions contributing to the cause of death. Very few people have died with COVID listed as their only medical condition.
Ms. Merrill, your time is up. Your 5 minutes is up.
If I can't finish, my brother will allow me his 5 minutes to speak, Eric Thompson.
I'm not sure how much you have left to say. We're sticking to the 5 minutes. If he wants to give up his time, Eric, is that correct?
I'll give her my time.
Okay.
Okay. The CDC has also deemed it acceptable that, quote, in cases where a definite diagnosis of COVID-19 cannot be made, but is suspected or likely, it is acceptable to report COVID-19 on a death certificate as probable or presumed. In these instances, certifiers should use their best clinical judgment in determining if a COVID-19 infection was likely, end quote. Many doctors across the world have successfully treated COVID, but those treatments were highly discouraged in the United States. How many lives could have been saved or symptoms could have been lessened? We cannot continue to allow this deception to control our lives. Lastly, the science is not conclusive. The evidence is lacking, the studies are few, and finding successful methods of testing have failed. To date, there are no studies that face masks provide enough evidence of reducing COVID-19 transmission for policymakers to be able to draw conclusive findings on the efficacy of masks. There are groups of doctors and epidemiologists publishing reports that are linking serious health conditions to mask wearing, including, but not limited to, shortness of breath, inflammation, chronic stress, immunosuppression, hypoxia, vascular disease, fatigue, anxiety, depression, compromised cognitive performance, bacterial and staph infections. If it's about science, then acknowledge all science. If it's about liability, then acknowledge that the ill health effects associated with wearing masks pose risk to our students, and this liability as well lies with you. If it's about our children and the greater good, then acknowledge that human connectivity is fed through facial expression, and exposure to faces is paramount to healthy neurological, relational, and psychological development. As parents, we spend years teaching our children to listen to the messages their bodies send them when they are uncomfortable, unsafe, and when something doesn't feel right. But now we are telling them, don't listen to your body, follow the rules. Our kids are abandoning their inner wisdom daily to appease authority. If they don't comply, they are punished, threatened, and even harassed. They miss out on time with friends, education, and sports. Stop making our kids afraid of each other, afraid to come to school, and even afraid of themselves, believing they might make someone sick or even kill somebody. The implication of what is happening in this district with masks is far more dangerous to our children than the risk of getting a virus. This is not about optics. It's not about seeming to do something simply to appease a group living in fear. This is about the health of our children, and this is a burden they have carried long enough, and it is no longer necessary. I will no longer act as if it is normal or acceptable, or I should just settle for the gratitude that our kids are back to in-person learning. As a parent, I am responsible for the health and well-being of my children, as are all the parents in this district, not you. Speaking up is hard. Calling attention to inconsistencies and dangerous mandates is hard. But watching our children suffer from the emotional and physical consequences of wearing masks in school and on the playground when they should be playing freely and connecting with each other is harder. We ask you to end the district's requirement for outdoor and physical education mask wearing immediately, and give our children and their parents the right to decide if mask usage is the right health decision for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Abigail Whitney. Abigail Whitney.
Hi, I'm Abigail Whitney. I'm a sophomore here at Lewis Central. I would just like to say, I am scared of COVID, of what's been going on. I'm scared of the people who have been talking in this room right now. I'm thankful for what you guys did in August. I have a compromised immune system, as well as many people in just my friend group that are also ill, and I can't get the vaccine because of health issues I have with previous vaccines being allergic to them, not because just the vaccine itself makes me sick. Ingredients in the vaccine make me sick. With this, I need herd immunity to make school a safe place for me. Until everybody is vaccinated, or the people who can get vaccinated, I'm not safe from COVID. I live with my grandparents as well, so if I get it and I transmit it to them, they are in that high risk range. And many other people at LC live with older relatives. It's not just me, it's so many people who could be affected by getting rid of masks. We only have 5 weeks of school left. Do we really need to be getting rid of them now? Next year might be different once more people get vaccinated. But as of right now, I know not many people are in our school. So feeling more safe to me would mean keeping our masks with us all the time, on our noses, even in PE classes. I know this is a big deal with the whole like, oh, you can't breathe, but I've had more people tell me their friends and family have died, or they've been sick with like horrible symptoms from COVID, than people who have come up to me saying, I'm gonna faint, or I got a rash. I've heard 0 people around our school say anything ever like that. I've never heard of a single case where somebody's gotten a rash from their mask, but I have heard plenty of people say, my grandpa just died from COVID. My aunt's in the hospital. I don't have much to say, but as a student at LC, I hope you take my words maybe over some other people's words. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, and Jaden Orozco, Orozco. All right, thank you.
Hello, school board. Let me get my notes out real quick. Okay, my name is Jaden Orozco. I'm a sophomore at Lewis Central. This year is actually my first year at Lewis Central, and I love the environment. I love the community. So thank you guys for making this an amazing place to be. First off,
I'd like to talk about my family. I have a lot of siblings, and all of them have underlying conditions, or at least most of them. My sister Kaylee, she has thyroid issues. Back in December, I tested positive for COVID because I was exposed to my father, who doesn't wear his mask, ironically, and I got COVID from him. And when I FaceTimed my sister and my mom to tell them that I tested positive, I couldn't even describe my sister's face to you guys. It was truly heartbreaking, seeing her bawl her eyes out in fear of not being able to go to school. And like, she's worked so hard. She wears her mask, she sanitizes her hands, sometimes she even wears gloves to school. And I truly think it's really heartbreaking that these people have to go to school in fear. And not because they're scared of wearing masks, but because they are scared of getting COVID from the people who don't wear their masks. Recently, I read an article over Sarpy County, which is a surrounding county near here, and doctors from Sarpy County are talking about the new strands of COVID, and these new strands are affecting kids from 0 to 17 years old. And like I said, this is extremely terrifying for people of that age range. And the vaccines, I heard that it was brought up in, I don't remember who it was, but my aunt is a pharmacist in the local area, and I cannot tell you how many people are excited to get their vaccines. The numbers are not low. There are so many people getting their vaccines. I know that the second I turn 16, I will be getting my vaccine as soon as possible. And I know other teenagers are just like that. I'd also like to point out that my pharmacist aunt is having people come in every single day, hours on hours, lining up out the door to get their vaccine and to make sure that their loved ones are safe. I am a sophomore at LC, like I mentioned. I am part of show choir, speech, the musical that just ended. But part of the show choir community, we went to the Baxter Arena, and the people who organized that for us was Papio South, and they were not able to come because their music department didn't wear masks. So they decided not to come to keep the rest of us safe. And I also heard the lunch tables mentioned, and I want to say that if you think that the lunch table arrangements are unsafe, then you obviously aren't hearing enough from your teenagers. The staff in charge of the lunchrooms and the cafeteria are completely strict on where the students need to sit. They made tape. There's 3 people to a table. And most kids sit at the same table every single day and are traced back if someone at that table tests positive. I know that when I tested positive, the people that I sat with at lunch did get tested. And I'd also like to see the proof of all of these different conditions that people and children are getting from these mask situations, because I know that I haven't seen anything on the news of these masks conditions. And if it is happening, I'm wondering the underlying conditions of your child if they are getting these rashes under their masks, and wondering if you are following the CDC guidelines on whether you are washing your kids' masks at home. And I would also like to mention that the adults in this room are very inconsiderate of these children. And I know that when Abby was up here saying what she needed to say, there was commentary in the back and shaking of heads, and I think it's extremely unprofessional. Because as a 15-year-old teenager, I think that me sitting here and standing here, that I should be standing here, I think it's ridiculous that I have to stand here and talk about my safety. Because wearing a mask is no problem compared to what will happen if we don't wear masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's going to end the part of the agenda, the comments and suggestions, and we'll go on with our board meeting. If anyone wants to stay, Dr. Knost will be giving a report for COVID updates. We'll go on to consent agenda. 5.01, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Do we have an updated personnel sheet?
There were no changes.
Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. All right, reports, 6.01, COVID updates.
Thank you. I do want to thank everybody who came tonight. I want to thank all of you with your thoughts, your individual thoughts. Many of you I've spoken to, either email or in some cases phone calls, except the students. I haven't talked to the students, and I honestly haven't talked with the teachers either. But I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. I want you to know none of it is falling on deaf ears. Please know that. I also want to make the statement as part of my update, okay?
Yes,
I'm
that's
not-
fine.
I'm not breaking the rules. I'm just making
Yeah.
it part of my update.
All right, thank you.
There's nobody sitting here that wants this to go on next year. I tell you that from the bottom of my heart. The challenge is that while we have a few different opinions and paradigms represented tonight, there are probably a plethora more that I've heard going all the way back to last year, all the way back to the very, very beginning. And it's been challenging for the board and for us to figure out, even when we went back to our return to learn plan, that we had an online meeting last August and had a couple of hundred people participate in that. But we're consistently being asked, please follow this, please follow this, please follow this. And it's just extremely difficult. And I know some people have combated this, and some even told me that the governor's office told them differently, but we were told from the beginning, we were recommended to follow our Department of Public Health, our local departments, because they are closest to our numbers and our infections. So that's what we've done. I don't want to speak on behalf of the Department of Public Health, but they are just as anxious locally to get to a point where they can advise differently, and they have been advising differently. Anytime we see the ability, we've been trying to move toward the outdoor piece, and we're making some steps in that direction. As my communication that went out on Friday, I talked about that a little bit. I hope you all were able to read it. That we do think students are going to be coming home and having different stories about various things and certain leniencies that are safe, according to what public health tells us. Typically what I do at this point in time, I'll just do today, just to give an update to the board. Things keep ebbing and flowing. There has not been a time this year where we have not had COVID positive cases in our school district. We have had hundreds of students and staff over the course of the year. They've ebbed and flowed. There are some times where we really, really felt like this thing is almost in our rearview mirror, and then they pop back up. Last week we went back into double digits. We'd been down below double digits, and we were really, really happy about that. And we were, thought that's a good sign. I still think it's a good sign because we didn't bounce back up even higher and higher and higher. But we did hit double digits, which was the first time we'd had that since January 4th. Pot County 2-week positivity rate has been between that, over the past number of weeks, between that 6 and 9%. Last week, it stayed up between the 6 and 7. And at the end of the week, it hit 5.7. Today, it's back to 6.4. That's the 14-day average positivity rate. The 7-day positivity rate, meaning the last 7 days, shows a little higher. It's 7%. In the last 7 days, there's 73 positive cases, new positive cases in Pot County. 30% of those are in the age groups from 0 to 29. Definitely the larger part of those are the older kids in those, as some said earlier. There's fewer in the younger, but we do have cases in our younger kids. We currently have 22 students in quarantine, which is really low. Just to give you something to compare that with, back in November when our numbers were high and we were We never closed. I'm happy about that. I know that so many of you on all sides of the opinion have shared that same thing with me, and thank you for that, that we're all happy that school has been in session and is staying in session. I think we're going to make it. I think it's going to happen. So, but back in November, we had a couple of hundred students quarantined. It's one thing, and I know there's not always agreement with this, but again, we're following public health. That's the one way that we feel we can be consistent, even though there's some disagreement with that. But the masks do allow us to not quarantine when students have exposures. And we do have some that happen at lunch, as somebody mentioned. That does happen. We have had positive cases who have transferred at lunch. We have some that happen in our activities after school. We have some that happen when kids, the older kids, drive to school together in cars and stay unmasked. That's with the tracing. A lot of them trace back to families that have cases in their family or events that they went to. But it does allow us to keep the quarantine numbers down. I'm thrilled about that, because I personally believe, and I'm going to be real quick in saying this is me, my philosophy is the best thing we can do for kids is keep them in school. I believe that. I believe that based upon being a dad who raised two daughters who had problems of their own. They never had to live through a pandemic. One's a teacher now, living through it, and one is a senior in college, about to become a teacher. And so I have those experiences, but I really do believe that the opportunity for children to be in school around their peers. I'll never forget a dad, and I don't remember who this was. If it's somebody in this room, I'm sorry for not remembering the name, but I've talked to so very, very many people in the last year on this topic alone. But I remember Dad contacted me in August and was very direct in what he had to share, and he didn't like the idea of a mask mandate. And he shared with me the reasons he didn't, but then he said, just tell me this. If my kid wears a mask, are you going to keep school open? And if my kid wears a mask, is my kid going to be able to play with his friends? And I said, yes. He said, all right, then I'll leave it alone. So we do feel good about the fact that we have been able to maintain school. And some people have challenged me and said other schools that all of Iowa has been open, and it's not true. There's been a lot of schools, even in our region, that have shut down. There's been a lot of schools that, even right next door, Council Bluffs, after Thanksgiving, had to go to a hybrid where their kids were only coming to school every other day. They had kids there every day, but groups of students were only there every other day. So we continue to look for those opportunities. It is going in the right direction. We have to take it a day at a time, a week at a time, but we feel really good about making it through the end of this school year, and we do believe in our heart of hearts that it's moving in the right direction. Public Health's very candid with me when they talk, and I ask them, I put them on the spot a lot. When can you give me, you give me this little bit of good news, when can you give me more? They're anxious to do that. They're going to continue to do that every chance they get, and everybody's goal is to have an even more normal beginning of the school year. So please know that. Please know that I've tried to be a very, very good listener through all of the conversations and emails. And I know sometimes if I don't say what people want me to say, it's not always received well, but I've tried to stay very kind and professional. But I do thank you all. You're advocates for your children, and thank you for that. And I think that's my COVID update for tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll go on to discussion items. 7.01, District Developed Service Delivery Plan, DDSDP.
So this is a little bit of a strange explanation for this tonight. So to make sure that we know, this is not really a presentation tonight for the District Developed Service Delivery Plan. All school districts in Iowa are required to have a District Developed Service Delivery Plan. We call it the DDSPD. I keep forgetting that. It's for special education students in preschool through grade 12, and it must be made available for public comment. We have to advertise that it's going to be a possibility for discussion at a public meeting. So we've done that, we've made that advertisement. This is not the night for the board to approve this. We will have the opportunity for public comment. We also, in the advertisement, we have the opportunity for either mailed in, emailed in, phone called in. There's other mechanisms for giving comments about the district developed service delivery plan. The requirements for the DDSDP are met through a set of 5 questions and a series of assurances. The questions address the following areas: the process used to develop the plan, how services will be organized for eligible individuals, how special education teachers' caseloads will be determined and monitored, what procedures will be used to resolve caseload concerns, and what process will be used to evaluate the effectiveness of the plan. Districts are required to review and readopt the plan every 5 years. We are at our 5-year mark. That's why we're going through this process. And the process involves a public comment time frame, including our board meeting. And after this, the committee that is working primarily with Lori Teese, our Director of Special Populations, the committee will make any necessary changes and submit the plan to the AEA director for approval. So it first gets approval through the AEA, and then after that, after receiving that, it will come back to our board, and that's where you will give approval. So tonight, it's just the opportunity as a mechanism and a place where we have public comments where we can put this up. So as you had mentioned earlier, Ms. Scheffel, that the comments and suggestions later in the board meeting, if there's anybody here that wants to comment on that, they'll be able to do it at that time. Lori, any additional comments or thoughts that you'd like to share in regards to the plan or how it's been working?
No, I think you said it very well. We did have a group of people, parents, administrators, AEA staff, general ed teachers and special ed teachers get together for a day or longer, actually, to look at our current plan and to make revisions. Great discussion, great input from parents. This has been out for public comment for over 3 weeks now. That being said, we've not received to date any written comments or verbal comments, but we certainly welcome those if anyone has any. And then, as Eric said, we'll send it to the AEA, David Van Horn, for approval, and come back in a couple weeks for potential adoption by the board.
Any questions
Yeah,
for?
from the board members, does anyone have any questions?
You'll have more opportunity for question again when it comes back before you approve it. But that's all on that topic.
All right. 7.02, frontline software renewal.
I'll say just a few things and then I'll actually defer to Andrea if she has any additional thoughts. But Frontline's our software product we use for our absent management and time tracking district-wide. And it is currently up for renewal, hence the reason to bring it to the board for approval. Andrea?
Yeah, so this is the yearly renewal of our absence management system and time tracking for the district-wide. The total cost of the frontline absence management and time solution is $21,159.38. So we'd just be asking for board approval of that this evening.
Is there any questions? Is this has it gone up in price?
It was just a slight increase of approximately $1,000 between this year and last year.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Okay, thank you. 7.03, staff laptop replacement cycle.
Obviously, this is exactly what it says, replacement of our staff laptops, but you have some information in front of you. I'm going to defer to Dave to walk through this.
Sure. We typically try to have our staff on a 3-year replacement cycle for portable devices. And this year, as you know, supply chain difficulties are providing especially difficult times for us. So instead of taking a traditional route of specifying a specific set of specifications that everybody could bid toward, we went to the vendors and said, so what's available? What kind of national stock do you have at your disposal or anticipate having? We did provide a set of specifications. And in fact, it came in very close to the numbers that you see here. We allowed them, however, to bid beyond the specification. So if they had access to stock that was near or they would bid a substitute for, we allowed them to do that. This particular laptop is not as nice a laptop as the ones we have now. The ones we have now are modular. This particular laptop is more of a standardized configuration. That being said, it's still a fine laptop. It will absolutely do what we need for it to do. And the vast majority of the laptops we're going to be replacing are Generation 2 devices, and we're in Generation 8 now for that particular model. So we'd recommend approving the 100 HP 250 G8 laptops from Riverside Technologies tonight for $68,700.
Is there any questions, discussion? Okay, thank you, Dave. 7.04, 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414 policy review updates and IASB alignments on the second read.
Yeah, so we brought these to the last meeting on a first read, and once again, it's a larger part of our complete policy book review, which we teamed up with IASB last year. As you know, in my first year, I was getting a lot of policy updates, and as we know, policy updates come when legislation changes, what governs school boards and school districts. So we've been starting with the 100 series. We are now through the 400 series. This was the last group of the 400 series. These were actually just added policies that did not change any practice that we have related to employees. You have contract release, employee retirement, reduction in force, all these things that we just did not have in policy. So these are all updates that align with current statutes and legislation. I did not receive any additional comments or no changes to them from the first read. So they are before you as they were on a first read, and we are recommending through for a second read.
Is there any discussion? Anyone see anything on the second read that need to be addressed? Okay, thanks. 7.05, 501 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
So here we go into the 500 series, and the 500 series starts dealing with all student-related issues. Again, I can tell you that there are not any, in fact, zero significant changes outside of updated legal references and combining and renumbering to better align with IASB. I brought, again, this is why we do a first read, then a second read. I was talking to Dr. Beinoff today, who reminded me that the existing foreign exchange piece does speak to foreign exchange students who are residing in our district, so who have host families in our district, and that is not on the new one, so that'll be a change that I'll bring back to you on the second read.
Okay.
Because the high school feels strongly that we should continue with that. In my experience, that's what most school districts do, and I think LC has always been like that as well, that you just want host families to be LC community members, so the kids are living in the district where they would be going to school. But other than that, again, there are no significant changes here. If there are any, as you're reviewing these over the next 2 weeks before we bring them back for a second read, please send any questions my way, and we'll bring them back on a second read with any needed changes.
Is there any discussion? Anyone see anything that needs to be addressed on those policies? Okay. 7.06, the superintendent review. I will ask again, Dr. Knost, if you would like your review in closed session.
I think so.
Okay, and per Iowa code, that is approved through Iowa Code 21.51I. Closed session is appropriate to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and when that individual requests a closed session. So with that, we will go on to our second time comments and suggestions to address the board, if anyone has anything to say about our agenda items.
And might I add, especially the district developed service delivery plan, just to
Correct.
remind people that now.
The 7.01, but can they also, ones online, can they get a hold of you if they have any
Yes.
comments, or Lori Tees?
Absolutely, and I'm staying up on this with Josh. We currently have about 45 people online, but there are no comments or questions at this time. But if there's anybody online that has questions or comments specific to the district developed service delivery plan, you can still deliver those to me and or Lori Tees. I would probably redirect them all to Lori, but,
Right.
but most definitely.
Okay. Okay, hearing none, we'll go on to action items. 9.01, we have no action with that. So we'll go to 9.02, frontline software renewal.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the annual renewal of the Frontline Absence Time Solutions software for $21,159.38.
and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wylage?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. 9.03, staff laptop replacement cycle.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of 100 HP ProBook 250 G8 laptops from RTI as presented for a total of $68,700.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wylage?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. 9.04, 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the second read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the presented policies included in the 407, 411, 412, 413, and 414 series on the second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wylage?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. 9.05, 501 policy reviews, updates, and IASB alignments on the first read.
Madam Chairwoman,
Mr. Hendricks.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the policies included in the 501 and 604 series and all accompanying regulations and exhibits on the first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Wylage?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffel?
Yes. Items of interest or future board meeting will be our regular board meeting on May 17th, 2021. And now we'll go back up to discussion items, 7.06 superintendent review. Can I get a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Wyledge?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. And at this.
you.